Xbox is currently getting absolutely destroyed. This is not a tragedy, this is a catastrophe. People are angry and people want to let out that anger. Xbox currently is on full absolute damage control. It has never been as bad before. Price increase for consoles, who cares? Another one, who cares? But the Game Pass, oh my god, the normies are currently up in arms. I can already see the pitchforks from way over here in front of Xbox. People are ridiculously mad. And then Xbox is doing everything they currently can to not let this outrage spread. They are lying, they are shilling. In fact, they are lying and shilling harder than asmongold shills diversity and government mandated IDs. It is absolute insanity to what's happening here. And it's only going to probably get worse because, boys, needless to say, we are not buying any of this crap.
We feel a deep responsibility to ensure that the games we make, the devices we build, the services that we offer are there through moments, even when the industry isn't growing and when you're through a time of transition.
What made subscription services...
By the way, this is Sarah something. She is the current head. That's right. Diversity hired head. 10 out of 10. But in her defense, she does have good feet. In any case, that aside, which is, by the way, 100% justification for everything, it's not looking good. She is currently the acting head of Microsoft's whole gaming division. So it's going to be fun for her, probably.
So appealing when they really started to boom a couple of years ago was that you were actually getting a deal. It was relatively affordable and you kind of could easily forget about that. When you have to consciously think about, is this worth it or not anymore, that kind of tells you how broken this system is. And Xbox finds them in that position, which now many gamers are realizing, I'd rather actually own my games than rent them, especially if I'm paying $360 fucking dollars a year for an old...
Smart, good. And again, previously Game Pass was $20, which already was not value, by the way. The typical person plays like 3 AAA games a year, which is roughly the equivalent of $240. So there you have it. So Game Pass was not already good when it was $20, and now that it's 30, people, everyone knows it's not worth it.
Ultimate experience to get day one games. A lot of people just seeing it as not worth it anymore, and that is a problem that Xbox does not have an answer to. And ultimately, the AAA games industry, when people talk about games, they love to say that everybody's spending money on microtransactions, everybody's investing in all these live services, everybody's buying 30, 40 games a year. That's just not the case. Maybe the hardcore gamers, but the average Joe, the average gamer is buying maybe 1 or 2 new games a year. Surveys and...
It's like, we already talked about this yesterday, but Legacy Kill HD probably watched all my videos before making this because he is just spitting out my talking points like there's no tomorrow. It's beautiful.
Studies have actually indicated most gamers are playing older games, and even with newer experiences, they're waiting for sales. This is a luxury. This gaming experience, this gaming medium is a luxury. It is not a necessity. And that is one of the things that these entertainment companies, not just in gaming, do not understand, or they do not care. One of the big criticisms that has been facing Game Pass for a while, and actually for years now, is about the sustainability and the profitability, because many detractors have said that this is not going to work out long term, and many of them can probably pat themselves on the back right now, because it definitely appears that either Xbox is not making the money that they need, or they're...
Wait, didn't he say the exact same sentence in yesterday's video? The detractors can pat themselves on the back. By the way, as one of the big detractors, I'll do that. I'll do that. I ain't here to brag, but I mean, I told you so. I predicted that this was going to happen 6 months ago, not even 6 months ago at this point, that there's going to be an increase. I mean, all the signs of collapse were there. All the signs of everything were there. And the fact that Xbox is doing great? No. Listen, if you're a company that has been historically always making a game, selling consoles and selling those games, and then suddenly you're like, okay, we're gonna be Netflix now. Fuck the games, all of that jazz. We're Netflix now. Okay? No, that's not what a healthy company does. That's someone who has been pushed into a corner does, okay? listen, most people don't understand this because, that people don't have a lot of experience with finance, but if you do, this becomes blatantly obvious. This is like one of the most obvious things ever because it's a very simple concept that you can apply, by the way, to everything. Get smarter, get better, small tips for everyday things. If something has a history of doing X and they made a living money off of it and suddenly they pivot into something else, that thing that they previously did is no longer profitable, or is collapsing, or has already collapsed, and they're desperately searching for a new solution. That's how these things work. And you can apply this, by the way, in life for pretty much any even remotely close of a situation. Okay? A game company that has been known to making, for example, strategy games and then first shooter games, and suddenly they no longer make strategy games, that's because the strategy games are probably doing horribly. Or maybe a shooter game just blew up really good for them and was something like that. You see, you can you apply this for anything, okay? Super simple stuff when you get the concept. And the concept is the thing that people don't get. So, as always, I'm here to make everything better.
Or being greedy, or maybe even both. But Sarah Bond, the Xbox president, was asked about Game Pass just the other day, just before all of these changes were implemented. And she seemingly indicated that everything was a-okay, they're headed in a positive direction, they're making record revenue, but it...
To be fair, if you're the president of Xbox or any company, you're always kind of... It's pretty much you're pretty much forced to always lie and say things aren't going good. Otherwise, that's bad.
Definitely just does not add up. So speaking in an interview with Game Watch, she said, well, she was asked about Game Pass, and she revealed an impressive sales number. She said last fiscal year, Xbox Game Pass sales reached a record high of $5 billion. She continued, she said, it's a profitable business and has more...
Oof. So, first of all, we can judge a lot about the quality, the assuredness of a company, how they choose to report their profits, sales, and whatnot. And that's typically by the number that they choose. Okay, so Xbox Game Pass sales reached a record of 5 billion. What does 5 billion mean? Well, we don't know. Considering you're increasing prices, considering this and that, we don't actually know if this is more people coming to the thing or this is just you raising prices and compensating for this. We just don't know. So the more nebulous the number is, and in Hollywood that typically is like minutes fucking watched or some shit like that, they're just trying to hide bad numbers. That's it. Look at Blizzard and World of Warcraft. While the numbers were good, they released player data. When the numbers were bad, they stopped releasing player data. The one moment when in the last 5 years that Blizzard actually had an uptick in player numbers, they instantaneously again released the player data. This is how these things work. They always work like that. The more simple the number is to understand and the more straightforward it is, the better things are currently. The more nebulous the fucking term is, she might as well said 5 billion cents or something like that because, the more complicated and arbitrary the number, the worse things are.
Continued, she said, it's a profitable business, and as more creators join Xbox Game Pass, payments to creators increase, so we think it's a good business for creators. And she continued talking about how they were expanding to...
Oh, and by the way, just from personal experience about these arbitrary numbers, okay? This just means that Xbox doesn't have anyone who's truly good with finance. Because the reason why I'm good in finance is because I find deceitful ways to actually show the real numbers and portray them as good even though they're bad. Okay? I don't have to lie and say, oh, there's 5 billion minutes played of the new game. It's really good. No, that doesn't say anything, okay? You find ways to explain these numbers the more in a straight way, in a deceitful way to lie to people and make them believe they are good. That's how you do it.
Payments to creators increased, so we think it's a good business for creators. And she continued talking about how they were expanding to other developers, saying, "We're building relationships with many well-known game creators in Japan and across Asia. We are thrilled that they are willing to collaborate with us and actively ship their games on our platform." This response just does not add up with what we are seeing. Sarah Bond, a C-suite executive, I think is blatantly lying here. There has to be a lot more going on behind the scenes in terms of conversations between Microsoft leadership and Xbox. Microsoft more focused on AI these days, but they still look at the investment, the massive investment that they did into the gaming sector, in which they spend billions on Activision, Blizzard, Bethesda, and a number of other studios, and so far they're not seeing the numbers that they wanted. And I think clear indication of that came last year. We heard this from Xbox head Phil Spencer in a couple of interviews that really indicated to me that Game Pass was not showing the growth that they really hoped for. You look to this VGC opinion piece. Phil Spencer, long cast as Xbox savior, maybe remembered as the man who killed it, and it highlights a recent interview at the time with Polygon, in which he said, "Without new customers, everybody else's customers, your success date. You can't succeed unless you draw in customers from other publishers and other platforms, and because you're not finding new customers with the games that you're building, everybody's kind of fighting over the same size pie." When you have an industry that is projected...
This is pretty much what what I'm saying, but he's trying to sugarcoat it, which is a good attempt. But this is what I'm always saying. There's only, at the grand scheme of things, there's only two ways. Technically, there's three ways, but for stuff like this, there's typically just only two ways. And those two ways to increase profits for this are very simple. Get more players, as Philly Spencery just said, or price increase. There you go. Price increase, by the way, is more typically better because, there's going to be people who cancel the subscription out of anger, but at some point they're probably going to return. That's the reality of a lot of these things. And that's what these people abuse, okay? Because these are the only two real ways to make line go up constantly, and, well, everyone at the company knows it. And increasing the price is way more easier than actually getting new people to use your product.
Projected to be smaller next year in terms of players and dollars, and you get a lot of publicly traded companies that are in the industry that have to show their investors growth, because why else does somebody own a share of someone's stock if it's not going to grow? The side of the business that gets scrutinized is the cost side, because if you're not going to grow the revenue side, then the cost side becomes challenged. And then he continued in another interview in November last year. He said, "The console space all up isn't growing across all of them. We love these customers, but in terms of continuing to expand and grow Xbox, it's about PC, it's about cloud, and it's about making our games more available in more places." And I think that's where you get an understanding about the decision making the last year or two, why they're pushing this is an Xbox marketing campaign. And I also think that it just has not worked out in the way that they hoped for. And this ultimately is their last straw, in which they realize, or maybe Microsoft leadership's like, well, you're going to have to throw those costs up because this is not sustainable for us. So I looked at what Sarah Bond says, and I just don't believe it for a second. And trusting any of these billion, trillion-dollar companies is always foolish, but I look to some of the things that have happened just in the last year or two, like the Hi-Fi Rush situation. Microsoft instantly came out, "We're so satisfied, we're happy with this gaming experience, it made the money it needed." A couple months later, the studio shut down and the sequel's canceled. Sometimes they're just completely dishonest, and I think this is another instance of it. And even so, them trying to say that all developers are really happy, they want to get invested in the subscription model, there's been some notable detractors. Sven Vink of Larian, behind the game Baldur's Gate 3, was one of the most notable against it, saying, "Whatever the future of games looks like, content will always be king, but it's going to be a lot harder to get good content if subscription becomes the dominant model and a select group gets to decide what goes to market and what not."
Bro.
Direct from developer to players is the way. He continued saying, "You won't find our games on a subscription service, even if I respect that for many developers, it presents an opportunity to make their game. I don't have an issue with that, I just want to make sure that the other ecosystem..."
This is true, but for Xbox, keep in mind, one of the main reasons why I actually think PlayStation won over Xbox is kind of something that what no one talks about. It's the fact, yeah, in general, in the past, year and a half or 2 years, that we have watched the Xbox new game releases and the PlayStation ones, Xbox just has woke slop. PlayStation has things that maybe they're not the biggest or most impressive, but they at least look fun. And this goes super quadruple for not the AAA releases. Whenever PlayStation has a non-AAA release, it's it's something niche that actually that you can tell a group of people are probably gonna really enjoy and have fun with. Okay, it's just designed to be fun. When Xbox does any of that shit, it's fucking Concord, and Concord's a political statement. It's South of Midnight, which is a political statement. It's that other girl with it's that other game with the black girl and shit, or three of those games. It's the same crap. Everything Xbox made when it was in AAA development was woke garbage, and it was blatantly obviously so. PlayStation didn't do that. Sure, they have Ghost of Yotei now, that's woke garbage, but I mean, other than that, PlayStation is winning huge when it comes to this.
Doesn't die because it's valuable. And right now, I think a lot of gamers are starting to see the value in owning your games, the value of paying a premium for those games and having access to it forever, because there's many that have invested in the Xbox platform for many years and they're now realizing they're soon not going to have access to these games unless they're coughing up $360 fucking dollars a year. So with the outrage that has erupted over these Game Pass changes, you might be wondering, how is Microsoft feeling about all of this? Well, we got a response just the other day. As Insider Gaming has the story, Microsoft tries to defend Xbox Game Pass increase. Goes on to say, while speaking with The Verge, Microsoft's Director of Gaming and Platform Communications, Dustin Blackwell, spoke about the move and said it's something they didn't take lightly as a company. They knew that this was coming. They knew there was going to be outrage. They had to have weighed all of these possibilities. That's why Sarah Bond, when she made those comments the other day, she knew that this was coming. She also knew that she wasn't being completely honest to the public with her response. At least that's what I believe based on those remarks and what's happened. This is what Blackwell said. He says, "We understand price increases are never fun for anybody, but we're trying to reinforce by adding more value to these plans as well." This is what they're talking about. This is the shit that they're talking about. It's only one tier that actually got an upgrade, if we're being honest. And it's the fact that you get Ubisoft Plus classics. I've seen people online saying, now you get access to Ubisoft Plus. Aren't you happy? You can play the newest Assassin's Creed Far Cry. That's not...
No. We saw the games list on this. It's shit. With the Dude, again, I said this previously. Ubisoft is in a situation where they're effectively milking Xbox at this point. They know Xbox is desperate, and Ubisoft doesn't even have to actually give them their good titles. They can give them 10-year-old games that were exclusive to PlayStation. And, but Microsoft just has to gobble that up because they don't have another choice.
Not this. You get select access to some classic games like Assassin's Creed Brotherhood that you can fucking buy on a shelf at GameStop or go to the flea market and find for $5. This isn't a massive deal. And then there's also Fortnite Crew, which, yeah, for some Fortnite players who invest heavily into that game, good for you, I guess, but I don't know how many of those individuals are even invested into the Game Pass platform, because...
It is actually the most... Well, first of all, Fortnite is a free-to-play game. So, getting extra money from it is always smart. The Fortnite decision is actually pretty good, because every time we check the most popular Xbox games by player count live, Fortnite is always like top 5, right? So, that is an actual good decision to milk the Fortnite players, because, well, I mean, otherwise you do nothing with them.
They're probably spending most of their time playing Fortnite, of all things. But Blackwell, he does continue. He says, it's something we don't take lightly, and we're listening to the feedback of players. I mean, the original feedback was that these Game Pass upgrades were a necessity. You looked at that video that we talked about just the other day.
Xbox Game Pass is getting an upgrade. We've listened to your feedback, and now you have even more freedom to choose how you play the games you want.
That was the invented upgrade and feedback of freedom and all of that nonsense they tried to spill out. Nobody believed it for a second. That's why I don't take this seriously. Them listening, if they don't care, they knew that this was coming. They knew the outrage and the uproar was going.
You know what this reminds me of? I mean, it worked for Blizzard, okay? Blizzard has been using for the, I think, past 5 years for World of Warcraft and the past, like, year for Diablo 4. We listen to your feedback, and we understand now what we did wrong. New expansion comes, nothing changes. Players mad. What did they do? We understand we did something wrong, but we are listening to your feedback, and we're gonna be doing things based on that. Next patch, next expansion, next whatever. Guess what? No one listens to shit again, and everything's bad. Guess what Blizzard says for the third time? We understand finally your feedback. And this has been happening for World of Warcraft for 5 fucking years now straight or something like that. And for Diablo 4 it has been happening for at least a year. They have been claiming to listening to player feedback from like season 4 or something. It is abysmal. But it works because some people are just, I don't know, stupid enough to not care. Do they not notice? Do they not pay enough attention? I don't know how, but a lot of people do actually believe this crap.
To be extreme. They did not care. Instead, they tried playing us for fools, making up this stupid excuse of upgrading the Ultimate by incorporating stuff that we don't care about. Ubisoft Plus Classics, most of us have played those games. I have them sitting on a shelf. Had been there, done that. I don't need that. Fortnite, most of us aren't playing Fortnite. This was, if you're talking about freedom, this is something, maybe have another tier or have it as an add-on or an optional thing. They did not want to do that. It was just an excuse to increase prices. And that's why them trying to come up with, actually, we upgraded it for you. Nobody is believing that unless you're a super hardcore corporate bootlicker. And yeah, it goes on to say we're listening to the feedback of players in the community to try to provide them with more of what they're asking for. Nobody was asking for this, but yet we got it. And he goes on to say, we're also now giving access to more than 75 day one releases each year. That's a 50% increase over the day one titles we provided last year. You want to know what games he's highlighting, what he's talking about? He says, yeah,
Nothing
Black Ops
of
7,
value.
The Outer Worlds 2. Obviously, there are some great day one releases that they've had, but their Xbox division has been...
I can't wait for the Outer Worlds too. It looks like such a massive failure. It's gonna be.
It's been in turmoil for a long time. The massive Game of the Year contenders that thought we were going to be getting, it has not happened. And it's because of the mismanagement from executives like Matt Booty, who has done a horrific job, but for some reason keeps getting raises and he keeps going up the ladder in Xbox leadership. I don't get it. I don't. But Black Ops 7, heavily disliked right now, a lacking interest in this experience, especially with Battlefield 6 on the way. And The Outer Worlds 2 has had some very underwhelming previews as of late. And then you look to all the other
As of late, wow, that's a nice way to sugarcoat it, honestly. In any case, that was Legacy Kill HD, 10 out of 10. Bye.